Section 21, Enforcement by the Secretary, Arizona Fair Housing 101, when conciliation doesn't resolve the complaint. Sarah looked up from her notes. So we've learned how complaints are filed. We've talked about investigations, and we know many cases are resolved through conciliation. She paused. What happens if the parties simply can't reach an agreement? David nodded. That's the next step. Not every fair housing complaint ends with a settlement. Some continue through the formal enforcement process, choosing how the case will be heard. David explained that once HUD determines there is reasonable cause to believe a fair housing violation has occurred, a formal charge may be issued. At that point, the parties generally have two possible paths. One option is to allow the matter to proceed before an administrative law judge, ALJ, through HUD's administrative hearing process. The second option is for one of the parties to elect to have the matter heard in federal court. So the case doesn't automatically go to court? Sarah asked. No, David replied. The law gives the parties certain procedural rights, including the opportunity to elect a judicial determination under appropriate circumstances. The administrative hearing process. If the matter proceeds through the administrative process, an administrative law judge conducts a formal hearing. Sarah asked, is it similar to a trial? In many ways, yes. The parties may present evidence, testify, call witnesses, question opposing witnesses, and be represented by legal counsel. The administrative law judge reviews the evidence, applies the law, and ultimately issues written findings and a decision. The process is designed to ensure both sides receive a fair opportunity to present their case, David explained. Sarah remembered something David had emphasized throughout the course. Documentation. David smiled. I was hoping you'd remember. Emails, text messages, advertising, MLS records, contracts, office policies, showing logs, transaction notes. All of these may become evidence during a fair housing hearing. Facts matter, but being able to prove those facts matters even more. Possible outcomes. After reviewing all of the evidence, the administrative law judge may determine that a fair housing violation occurred. If so, the judge has authority to order appropriate remedies under federal law. Depending on the circumstances, those remedies may include compensation for individuals who were harmed, orders requiring discriminatory practices to stop, fair housing training or policy changes, other equitable relief designed to prevent future violations, civil penalties authorized under federal law, which are periodically adjusted for inflation. So, the goal isn't simply punishment. Correct. The goal is to correct the violation, compensate those who were harmed when appropriate, and encourage future compliance. What if no violation is found? Sarah asked, what happens if the judge determines there wasn't discrimination? David replied, then the complaint may be dismissed. He reminded Sarah that every fair housing complaint is evaluated individually. Some investigations uncover violations. Others demonstrate that the licensee or housing provider acted appropriately and complied with the law. That's why we never assume the outcome. We let the evidence tell the story. Professional licenses may also be affected. David pointed out another important consideration. When a fair housing violation involves someone who holds a professional license, the findings may also be referred to the appropriate licensing authority. Sarah immediately understood. So for Arizona real estate licensees, that could include the Arizona Department of Real Estate. David nodded. Exactly. Fair housing violations don't just create federal concerns. They may also affect your professional license. A lesson every broker should remember. Sarah closed her notebook. I've noticed that every chapter keeps leading back to the same idea. David smiled. What is it? Treat everyone fairly. Document everything. Follow office policies. And ask questions before making difficult decisions. David laughed. If every licensee followed those 4 rules consistently, we'd see far fewer fair housing complaints. Arizona broker tip. Most fair housing investigations never begin with someone intending to violate the law. They often start with inconsistent business practices, poor communication, or assumptions made during everyday transactions. Consistent office procedures, thorough documentation, and ongoing education remain the most effective ways to reduce fair housing risk and protect both your clients and your real estate license. Online discussion. Question 1. Why does the Fair Housing Act allow some cases to proceed before an administrative law judge, while others may be heard in federal court? Answer. Federal law provides procedural options depending on the circumstances of the case. Both processes are designed to ensure that the parties receive a fair opportunity to present evidence and have the dispute resolved according to the law. Question 2. Why is documentation so important during an administrative hearing? Documentation provides objective evidence of what occurred during the transaction. Emails, contracts, advertising, and transaction records often become critical in determining whether fair housing laws were followed. Question 3. Why can a fair housing violation affect a real estate license in addition to creating federal liability? Answer. Real estate licensees are subject to professional licensing laws and regulations. Findings involving unlawful discrimination may also be reported to the Arizona Department of Real Estate or other licensing authorities for possible disciplinary review.